My name is Avery Lang. I'm 35 years old, and this is the story of how my 1 year marriage went from perfect couple to a full blown dumpster fire. And I never had to raise my voice once. If my best friend from the station heard me say that, he'd probably roll his eyes and tell me I'm being dramatic. But I work around literal fires for a living. I know what it looks like when something seems fine on the surface while it's quietly melting from the inside out. Hey, Reddit, I guess. Long-time lurker, first-time poster. Grab your popcorn. You're gonna need it. On paper, my life was boring in all the right ways. I'm a firefighter. 10 years on the job, decent pay, good benefits, a shift schedule that always makes civilian friends say, I could never do that. I still pull hose and swing an axe with my crew, even though I also handle some of the boring stuff. Training logs, scheduling, paperwork that multiplies at 2 a.m. My husband, Ethan, has the kind of job my mother used to call romantic, and I called one missed payment away from a panic attack. He owns a small bakery. When people hear that, they picture charming storefronts, cute cupcakes, and latte art hearts on Instagram. They don't picture unpaid invoices, brutal reviews, and a walk-in fridge that eats electricity like it's a sport. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We met 5 years ago at the worst possible time for both of us. He was 29, I was 30. I was responding to a kitchen fire at a commercial building downtown. Small blaze, mostly smoke damage, but someone had left industrial ovens running overnight, loaded with product. Amateur hour. We pulled up, lights flashing, and there he was, standing on the sidewalk in a flour-stained t-shirt, hands in his hair, eyes wide, looking like someone had just taken a match to his entire future. It wasn't technically his building, but he'd been renting kitchen space there for his startup bakery. All his equipment was inside, all his ingredients, all of his savings probably, if I had to guess. I remember the way his voice shook when he told me that. Not macho, not cool, just terrified. I told him we'd do what we could, then switched into work mode. We masked up, went in, cleared the building, knocked the fire down. It wasn't pretty, but it was fast. Most of his stuff survived. Some smoke damage, a few things ruined, but nothing structural, no one hurt. Could have been so much worse. When I came back out and gave him the rundown, he just sagged with relief. Then he hugged me. Full body, impulsive, grateful hug. I wasn't expecting it. I'm used to thanks officer or awkward handshakes. Not this guy just folding into me like I'd dragged him out of a burning building instead of some sheet pans and mixers. He pulled back, eyes still wet, and said, "Can I get your number? I want to send you a thank you gift." I should have said no. You're not supposed to mix work and random men who smell like singed sugar. But there was something earnest about him, something raw. Big dreams, no plan, all heart. I gave him my number. We started texting, then talking, then just coffee that turned into staying until the cafe closed. He had big plans about building something from scratch. Artisan cakes, custom orders, the whole "your wedding cake will change your life" speech. I respected the hustle. Starting a business is brutal. Takes guts I wasn't sure I had. I was making steady money. No kids, no major debt. I'd been on the job long enough that the adrenaline had worn off and the routine had set in. Ethan felt like color, noise, a different kind of risk. We dated for 6 months before we moved in together, married a year after that. By the time the wedding cake, yes, he made it himself, yes, it was dry, was cut, his business was already starting to wobble. Reviews weren't great, clients were scarce. His Instagram looked pretty, but pretty doesn't pay rent. I figured it was just growing pains. Every new business stumbles, and I had a stable income. I could cover us while he found his footing. That was the plan. Support his dream, build something together, maybe start a family once things leveled out. Normal stuff. Then, 3 months ago, my mother got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. 6 weeks from diagnosis to gone. Fastest, most brutal thing I've ever watched. And I've seen houses collapse and people pulled out of wrecked cars. Mom had always been healthy, walked every morning, ate her vegetables, nagged me about sunscreen. Then suddenly she couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't even sit up without help. Her skin turned sallow, her voice thin. The woman who used to chase me around the kitchen with a slipper couldn't walk to the bathroom. Ethan was decent at first. Came to the hospital, brought food, sat with us while the doctors explained things we already knew were bad. 2 weeks before she died, when she could barely speak, Mom asked Ethan to sit beside her bed. Her hands were shaking when she reached for the necklace on her chest, a thin gold chain with a ring threaded through it. Her wedding ring. 3 generations in my family had worn that ring. Gold band, 3 small diamonds. Not flashy, but it meant everything. She pressed it into Ethan's palm and squeezed his fingers. "Wear it," she whispered. "You're family now. Take care of my girl." Ethan cried. I cried. Dad looked away because if he didn't, he'd fall apart. Ethan promised he would. The ring was too small for his finger, so he wore it on a chain around his neck. For a minute, it felt like Mom was handing the baton off, like she trusted him to stand where she couldn't anymore. 2 weeks later, she was gone. We scheduled the funeral for the following Saturday. Simple service, just family and close friends. Dad handled most of the logistics because that's how he coped, with tasks, lists, phone calls. I handled the stuff that hurt more, picking the photos, choosing the dress she'd wear in the casket. Ethan knew how much I needed him there. I didn't think I had to say it out loud. You don't send a calendar invite for your husband to show up at your mother's funeral. Friday night, the day before, everything seemed normal. Ethan was quiet. He said he was tired and went to bed early. I stayed up late at the kitchen table, surrounded by old photo albums, trying not to get snot on the glossy pages. Saturday morning, I got dressed in my black suit, same one I wear for firefighter memorials. It felt wrong and right at the same time. At 8:30, I called Ethan to see when he'd be ready. No answer. I tried again at 9 o'clock. Nothing. By 9:30, I was sitting in my car outside the funeral home, staring at my phone like I could force it to ring. Finally, it buzzed. Text from Ethan. "Baby, I'm so sorry. Julia's party is today, and it's a huge opportunity. These people could save the bakery. I know the timing is bad, but I have to go. You understand, right? I'll make it up to you. Promise." I read it once, twice. A third time. Julia, his ex-girlfriend, the psychiatrist with connections, the one I'd never had a real problem with until that second. My husband was texting me that he was skipping my mother's funeral for his ex-birthday party. I called him immediately, straight to voicemail. Texted back, fingers shaking. "The funeral is in 30 minutes. You need to be here." His response came fast. "I can't. This is too important. Julia specifically invited me because she knows investors. I'll be thinking of you. I'm sorry." Thinking of me. He'd be thinking of me while laughing at his ex's party instead of standing next to me while we lowered my mother into the ground. I stared at the message until the words blurred. My throat closed up. For a second, I honestly thought I might pass out before I even made it inside. Then my phone buzzed again. Different notification tone. Bank alert. Large purchase on my credit card. $3,000 at some high-end boutique downtown. My credit card. The one Ethan was not authorized to use. I felt something in me go very, very still. I called the bank from the driver's seat, hands locked around the steering wheel so hard my knuckles ached. They confirmed the charge. I called the boutique. The sales associate remembered him immediately. He'd bought a designer suit, black, tailored. Something special, she said, for an important event. Julia's party. My husband had stolen my credit card and spent $3,000 on a suit to impress his ex-girlfriend on the day of my mother's funeral. I started laughing, not because it was funny, because it was so grotesquely absurd that my brain short-circuited. Like, of course this is how today is going. Somewhere between the third bitter laugh and the first real tear, I felt a switch flip inside my chest. Firefighters are trained to recognize when a building is a total loss, when you stop trying to save what's already gone and start making sure it doesn't take anything else down with it. Sitting in that parking lot in my black suit, staring at my husband's text and the fraud alert, I realized my marriage was that building. Total loss. I wiped my face, turned my phone off, and walked into my mother's funeral alone. The funeral home lobby smelled like old flowers and floor polish. Soft piano music hummed in the background, the kind that's supposed to be comforting and just makes you feel like you're underwater. A few heads turned when I walked in alone. My dad spotted me first. He was already there, standing near the guest book, shaking hands like he was hosting a polite little brunch instead of his wife's funeral. His suit hung looser than it used to. Grief had carved 10 pounds off him in 6 weeks. "Avery," he said, and his face crumpled for half a second before he pulled it back together. "Hey, Dad." My voice didn't sound like mine. His eyes flicked past my shoulder, searching for Ethan. When he didn't see him, he didn't ask. Just pulled me into a hug and held on longer than usual. His hand shook against my back. He knew. My younger sister Mara came over a minute later, mascara already smudged. "Where's Ethan?" she whispered, like maybe he'd pop out from behind a floral arrangement if we said his name. "Not coming," I said. Her brows snapped together. "What? Why?" "We'll talk about it later." She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, then looked at my face and closed it. Whatever she saw there shut the question down. The service started at 10:20 a.m., sharp. Mom would have liked that. She hated when people were late. I sat in the front row next to my dad. On my other side, there was an empty seat. Ethan's seat. It felt like it had its own gravity, dragging my attention back to it over and over. Everyone noticed. Nobody said anything. Empty seats at a funeral say more than any speech. The pastor said all the right things about faith and hope and how Mom was in a better place. I stared at the casket, at the framed photo of her laughing at some family barbecue, and thought about how she'd pushed that ring into Ethan's hand and told him to take care of me. He wasn't even there to see her buried. Dad gave a eulogy that should have broken him. 42 years of marriage, condensed into 10 minutes. He talked about the day they met, the way she snored when she was exhausted, the way she'd leave post-it notes all over the house with reminders and dumb jokes. His voice cracked once, just once. He cleared his throat and kept going. I couldn't speak at all. I'd written something the night before, paragraphs I thought I might be able to get through if I focused on the paper instead of the casket. But when the pastor asked if anyone else wanted to say a few words, I just shook my head. If I opened my mouth, I wasn't sure what would come out. A tribute to my mother, or a scream about my absent husband. After the final hymn, people lined up to offer condolences. I hugged relatives I barely remembered, Dad's old coworkers, Mom's church friends, over and over. "She loved you girls so much. Your mother was so proud of you. If you need anything." Behind every hug, I could feel that empty seat like a missing tooth in the room. When it was over, I stood by the casket one last time, fingers resting on the cool wood. I wanted to apologize for not being able to fix it, for bringing a man into our family who wasn't even capable of showing up for her goodbye. Instead, I just whispered, "I'm sorry, Mom," and walked out. I didn't go to the reception afterward. Couldn't face another round of small talk and casserole. I told Dad I was tired, kissed his cheek, and promised to stop by the next day. Outside, the late morning sun felt wrong. Too bright. Too normal. I sat in my car, took a breath that hurt, and turned my phone back on. 27 texts. Most from Ethan. A few from family members asking where he was. I opened his thread first. "I know you're upset, but this is really important for us. These investors could change everything. You have your family there. I'm building our future. Please don't be mad. You're being emotional." I scrolled. "I don't understand why you're ignoring me. This isn't fair. I'm doing this for us." "You're being childish, Avery." Childish? I stared at that word until my thumb started to ache from how hard I was gripping the phone. Childish. For expecting my husband to show up to my mother's funeral instead of drinking and networking at his ex-girlfriend's birthday party in a stolen designer suit. Something inside me locked into place. Not fiery anger, not dramatic heartbreak, just clarity. The kind I get walking into a structure fire and realizing the staircase is already gone. You don't debate it, you adapt. I didn't text him back. I didn't open the messages from relatives asking, "Where's Ethan?" and "Everything okay?" I put the car in drive and went home. The house felt wrong the second I walked in. Too quiet. His car wasn't in the driveway. Dishes from his "I'm so stressed about the bakery" late-night snack sat in the sink. A jacket thrown over the back of a chair. Evidence of a husband who existed in the space, even if he hadn't bothered to show up where it mattered. I dropped my keys on the counter and stood there for a long time, staring at nothing. Then I picked up my phone and scrolled to a contact I'd added months ago and hoped I'd never need. Mason, a guy from the station who'd gone through a nasty divorce 3 years back. He answered on the first ring. "Avery, you okay?" "No," I said. The word came out flat. "Do you still have that divorce attorney's number?" There was a beat of silence. Yeah, I do." He read it out. I wrote it on the back of a takeout menu with a shaking hand. "Are you safe?" he asked. "Yes. Want me to come over?" "No, I'm fine." I wasn't, but this wasn't a fire. There was no immediate threat, just a slow, corrosive one. "Okay, call if you need anything. And, I'm really sorry about your mom." "Thanks," I said, and hung up before the softness in his voice could crack me open. I called the attorney next. He picked up on the third ring. Calm voice, controlled, the way people sound when they've heard every possible version of "my marriage is on fire." "This is Daniels." "Hi," I said. "My name is Avery Lang. My husband skipped my mother's funeral today to go to his ex-girlfriend's birthday party. He used my credit card without permission to buy a $3,000 suit for it, and my mom gave him a 3-generation wedding ring 2 weeks before she died, which he's now misplaced. I want to file for divorce." There was a brief pause. "All right, Ms. Lang," he said, "let's talk." We were on the phone for about 90 minutes. I told him everything. How we met, how I'd been covering bills while his bakery bled money, the business loans I'd made to him from my savings, the texts, the fraud alert, the funeral, the ex, the ring. He asked sharp, practical questions. Dates, amounts, screenshots, whether Ethan was on any of my accounts, whether he had keys, whether I felt in danger of him getting violent. "No," I said. "He doesn't hit. He just takes. And then he acts like I'm the crazy one for noticing." "Marital misconduct, financial misconduct, abandonment during a family crisis," Daniels said, almost clinically. "We can file immediately, if you're sure." "I'm sure," I said, and realized I meant it all the way down. "In that case, first step, secure your finances, remove his access to credit cards, shared accounts, anything he could drain. Change your passwords. Document everything, every text, every charge. Assume we will need to show it to a judge, and prepare for retaliation. People don't always respond well when they realize the gravy train has stopped." "When can we file?" I asked. "Monday morning," he said. "I'll have papers ready. I'll email you a list of documents I need tonight." I hung up and stared at my reflection in the dark TV screen. I looked like someone who'd been hit by a truck, but behind the red eyes and the smeared mascara, there was something new. Resolve. I pulled up our banking app and started dismantling my marriage like it was a dangerous structure we were doing a controlled demolition on. First, I called the credit card company that had sent the fraud alert, reported the card as stolen. They froze it immediately and started an investigation. I made sure Ethan's name wasn't listed as an authorized user anywhere. It wasn't, but that didn't matter. He'd taken it anyway. Then I went through every account we had together. Checking, savings, the joint card we used for groceries. I changed passwords, removed his access where I legally could, set up alerts for any large withdrawals. I pulled up the separate account I'd opened when Ethan first started talking about expanding the bakery, the one I'd quietly kept in only my name, because something in my gut had told me love and due diligence could coexist. Good thing I'd listened. Next, I opened my laptop and went hunting through our messages. We had a shared tablet we kept in the living room. Ethan used it for recipes, Netflix, and apparently texting Julia. Their thread went back weeks. At first, it was professional, her asking about the bakery, him complaining about reviews, her talking about stress at the practice. Then it shifted. Inside jokes, late-night messages sent at 1 a.m., her calling him E and sending winking emojis. Nothing explicitly sexual, but the tone made my skin crawl. They'd planned this party together in detail. Guest list, menu, the right suit. Her promising to introduce him to people with real money. Him talking about how underappreciated he was, how no one believed in his vision. He sure hadn't sounded underappreciated when he was swiping my card. I took screenshots of everything. Texts, dates, the boutique charge, the bank alert. I printed copies on our crappy home printer and saved digital backups to an external drive. Daniels had been very clear. If it wasn't documented, it might as well not exist. As I worked, my phone buzzed on the counter, lighting up with Ethan's name over and over. I didn't look. I didn't answer. By the time the sun went down, I'd turned our kitchen into a war room. Papers spread out, timelines forming in my head, accounts locked down. Grief sat heavy in my chest, but beneath it, something else was growing. Not revenge exactly, not yet. Just the understanding that I did not have to stay inside a burning building out of loyalty to the person who lit the match. Sunday morning crept in slowly, gray light seeping through the blinds. I hadn't really slept, just drifted in and out, replaying every moment of the funeral, every text from Ethan, every lie he'd told himself about building our future. At 10 o'clock a.m., I heard the familiar purr of his car pulling into the driveway. I watched from the living room window as he sat in the driver's seat for a long moment, adjusting his hair in the mirror, wiping something off his shirt, practicing a face that said, "I'm the reasonable one here." Then he grabbed his overnight bag, the one he'd taken to Julia's, and walked up to the door like he was returning from a weekend business retreat. He let himself in with his key. "Hey, baby," he called brightly, stepping into the living room. "Sorry I was gone so long. Julia's place is just really comfortable. And—" "Pack a bag," I said. He blinked. "What?" "Pack a bag," I repeated. "You're leaving." His eyebrows shot up. "Avery, what are you talking about?" I stood up slowly. I didn't yell, didn't shake. I was done giving him emotional reactions he could twist into excuses. "You missed my mother's funeral," I said evenly, "to go to your ex-girlfriend's birthday party. You stole my credit card to buy a $3,000 suit to impress her. You stayed at her place for 2 nights while I buried my mother alone. Pack a bag. You have 20 minutes. His face twisted from confusion into annoyance, the entitlement surfacing. "You're overreacting." "No," I said. "I'm articulating cause and effect." "It was a business opportunity," he said, dropping his bag on the couch like he was settling in to lecture me. "Julia knows investors. She wanted to help. This could be huge for the bakery." "Nothing about this situation is about the bakery," I cut in. "This is about you choosing Julia over your own wife on the worst day of her life." He scoffed. "That's dramatic." "You're right," I said. "It is dramatic, because what you did was dramatic." He spread his hands. "People miss things for work all the time." "People don't miss their spouse's parents' funeral for a party," I snapped, the first crack in my calm. "And certainly not for a party hosted by their ex." He rolled his eyes. "Julia and I are just friends. You're making this a bigger deal than it is." "I'm treating it exactly as big as it is," I said coldly. 18 minutes now. His jaw clenched. "You can't kick me out. This is my house too." "My income paid this mortgage," I said. "My overtime shifts kept the electricity on. My firefighter salary carried this place while your bakery hemorrhaged money. This was my house. You were a guest I cared for, a guest who overstayed his welcome." He stared at me like he couldn't decide whether to yell or perform sadness. "You're being insane," he muttered. 16 minutes. That startled him. "Avery, come on. We can talk about this. Sit down. Let's be rational." I tilted my head. "Okay, rational. Let's talk about the $3,000 on my credit card." His face went pale. "What?" "I checked the account while sitting in the funeral home parking lot," I said flatly. "Fraud alert, boutique purchase. Called them. They remembered you." His mouth opened and closed. It was an investment in my business." "Investment?" I laughed once, short and sharp. "You bought a Valentino suit to impress your ex-girlfriend. That's not an investment, that's theft." "We're married," he said weakly. "It's our money." "It was our money," I corrected. "Now it's evidence." He froze. "Evidence?" "My attorney is filing for divorce Monday morning." That was when he sat down hard on the arm of the couch, like his knees gave out. Your attorney?" he whispered. "Yes. You're divorcing me over missing one funeral, one credit card theft, one abandonment, one ex-girlfriend you couldn't stop texting, one ring you conveniently left at Julia's place, which brings us to the next point." His eyes darted to the chain around his neck, the one that should have held my mother's ring. "Where is it?" I asked. He swallowed. "Avery, I took it off to shower and— Julia's place is nice. We were rushing. I left it there." "And when were you planning to tell me that?" "I was going to get it back." "You have 48 hours, I said. Return it, or I report theft of a family heirloom." "That's not fair," he snapped. "Your mom gave it to me." "She gave it to her son-in-law," I said softly, "not the man who abandoned her daughter." He looked like he'd been slapped. "You planned this," he spat suddenly. "All those business loans, you were keeping track, counting every dollar, waiting for an excuse." "I was protecting myself," I said. "Turns out that was smart." His eyes filled with tears, not grief tears, panic tears. "Avery," he said, voice cracking. "You're being cruel. Please, just talk to me. You know how stressed I've been. You know how hard it is to run the bakery. You know how much pressure I'm under. And you know how much pressure I've been under while losing my mother," I said quietly. He froze. "Which do you think matters more?" I asked. "Your business struggles or my mother's funeral?" He didn't answer. 10 minutes, I said. He moved then, scrambling to grab a duffel bag, throwing clothes into it with shaking hands, muttering about unfairness and overreactions and just one mistake. I sat on the bed and watched him pack, calm, detached, done. This wasn't rage, it wasn't vindictiveness. It was triage. When he finished, he stood in the doorway, eyes red. "You'll regret this," he whispered. "Julia treats me better than you ever did." "Then you should be very happy together," I said, and walked him downstairs. He stood on the porch for a long moment, like he expected me to take it all back. I didn't. Don't forget, I said, 48 hours for the ring. He flinched, climbed into his car, and drove off. As soon as he turned the corner, I locked the door. Then I changed the locks. By noon, my phone was buzzing nonstop. His friends, his sister, 2 coworkers of his I barely knew. What happened? Why is Ethan saying you're kicking him out? Are you okay? I sent one message to all of them. Ethan missed my mother's funeral for his ex-girlfriend's birthday party, and he stole my credit card to do it. That's the whole story. The responses dried up immediately. The house was silent again. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was suffocating. I felt like I could breathe. The house was quiet in a way that felt unnatural, like the moment after a fire is extinguished, but before the smoke clears. I kept expecting Ethan to come storming back in, shouting about misunderstandings, about us, about fixing things. But he didn't come back that night. He did, however, text. A lot. Ethan, we need to talk. Ethan, I'm sorry, okay? I got caught up in the moment. Ethan, it wasn't even a big party. Ethan, you're being unreasonable. Ethan, Avery, please answer me. Ethan, Avery? I didn't respond. Instead, I sat on my couch, laptop open, watching the email from my attorney roll in. A list of documents and screenshots he needed. I had most of it already. At 3:12 a.m., my home security camera alert pinged. Avery, front driveway, motion detected. I froze. The timestamp was blinking on the screen. I tapped the notification. The video loaded. And there he was. Ethan's car rolled up silently, headlights off. He parked 2 houses down, sat there for a minute, head bowed, hands gripping the steering wheel like he was talking himself into something. Then he got out. He walked toward my driveway, hood pulled up, shoulders hunched. He kept glancing around like a teenager sneaking out past curfew, but his movements were sharp, intentional. He crouched beside my truck. From his pocket, he pulled out something metallic. I leaned forward. A kitchen knife. He examined the blade, then went to work. Slowly, methodically, tire by tire, 4 long, deep slashes. He didn't rush. He didn't hesitate. He took his time, like he was decorating a cake, not committing a felony. When he finished, he stood up, looked directly into the camera, square into the lens, and smiled. A cold, satisfied, self-righteous smile. Then he walked back to his car and drove away. I watched the footage 3 times, numb. Then a dull laugh escaped me, a humorless, exhausted sound. This man slashed my tires, on camera, with a knife, after I told him I was filing for divorce, and after missing my mother's funeral, and after stealing my credit card. It would have been comical if it weren't so pathetic. At 6:20 a.m., when the sun was barely up, I went outside. Sure enough, my truck was sinking unevenly on 4 shredded tires, rubber curled outward like the petals of a ruined flower. I called the police. A patrol car arrived in 20 minutes. The officer walked the perimeter, inspected the damage, then stood next to me as I pulled up the footage. He watched Ethan crouch, slice, move to the next tire. Then Ethan's face lifted, smile bright, proud, like he'd won. The officer let out a low whistle. That's pretty definitive. Yeah, I said. He knew about the cameras. He smiled at them, the officer noted. Oh, he wanted me to know it was him. You want to press charges? Yes. He nodded. This is felony criminal damage, over $1,000. Could run up to $3,000 depending on rim damage. $3,000? I repeated, almost laughing. Funny, that's exactly what he spent on the suit he bought with my card. Karma has a sense of humor, the officer said, jotting it down. He filed the report, gave me a case number, and promised a detective would follow up. After he left, I called a tow truck. While waiting, I emailed the footage to my attorney with the subject line. More evidence. By Monday morning, everything was in motion. Attorney Daniels filed the divorce petition the moment the courthouse opened. Ethan was served Tuesday afternoon at the bakery. He called from a blocked number that night. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail, voice high and frantic. Avery, what the hell? Divorce? Cops? Are you insane? You're blowing everything out of proportion. Then he made a fatal mistake. And I'm not giving you that ring back. Your mom gave it to me. Forwarded, saved, documented. On Wednesday morning, 3:00 a.m., my security camera caught him again. Not slashing tires this time, just pacing on the sidewalk, hands in his hair, stress etched into every movement. He didn't step foot on my property. Maybe the police report scared him. But I didn't care why. His presence alone made my stomach twist. I sent the footage to the detective and to Daniels. Daniels called immediately. This man is escalating. I'm filing for a restraining order. Today. By Thursday, Ethan had a lawyer. His attorney called Daniels, voice clipped and embarrassed. "We'd like to negotiate," he said. "My client is willing to pay for the tires if your client drops the criminal charges." Daniels smiled. I could hear it in his voice as he recounted the conversation to me. "I'm afraid that won't be possible. Ms. Lang is pursuing both civil and criminal remedies." "Well, perhaps we can resolve the credit card issue amicably." "No, that's fraud." "And the ring? That ring is a 3-generation heirloom. If it's not returned, we will pursue full restitution." There was a long silence. Then, how much restitution? "Appraised at $8,000. $8,000? But his ex took it," the attorney sputtered. "With Mr. Lang's permission," Daniels replied. "That makes him responsible." Another silence. Then a sigh. "We'll be in touch." The detective called Friday morning. "We picked him up," he said. He cooperated. Not happy about it, but cooperative. "Thank you," I said. He paused. "I've been doing this 20 years. People don't smile into cameras unless they're trying to provoke someone. Watch your back and keep doors locked." "I will." Later that afternoon, Daniels called again. "Ethan's attorney is scrambling," he said. "They're desperate for a deal. They want to know what it'll take for you to drop charges." "Nothing," I said flatly. "Good," Daniels said, "because that's exactly what I told them." By the following week, negotiations were underway. Not for mercy, but for the logistics of Ethan's consequences. He agreed to plead guilty to misdemeanor criminal damage, pay full restitution for the tires, pay restitution for the stolen suit, $3,000, pay the appraised value of the ring, $8,000, if not returned, cover court costs and mandatory fees, accept wage garnishment at 20% of his income, attend anger management classes, complete 100 hours of community service, spend 1 year on probation. If he violated anything at all, the felony charge would be reinstated. Daniels delivered the summary with satisfaction. "It's not mercy," he said. "It's leverage. Long-term. Total amount owed? Around $18,000, just for the criminal side. The divorce settlement, still pending, would add another $35,000 owed to me for the bakery loans. Total $53,000. Payable through garnishment and payment plans for years." Ethan agreed to everything. He didn't have a choice. Julia never returned the ring. Later I found out why. She'd pawned it the same week Ethan moved in with her. Of course she had. When Daniels told me, I didn't even feel angry. Just tired. Just done. The marriage was ashes, and I was finally walking away from the smoke. Divorce moved faster than I expected. 6 weeks after Ethan was served, I found myself sitting in a courtroom that smelled faintly of dust and old paper, watching the judge flip through our documents. He didn't even look confused. It was like he'd seen 1,000 versions of this case before. A spouse who took advantage, who escalated, who thought consequences were optional until suddenly they weren't. Ethan didn't show up. His attorney came alone, stiff and embarrassed, carrying a stack of forms like they weighed 100 pounds. The judge reviewed the settlement, nodded once, and said, "Approved?" Just like that, I was legally single. I walked out of the courthouse feeling lighter than I had in months, as if someone had been standing on my chest and finally stepped aside. That night, I made myself real food for the first time since Mom got sick. Pan-seared salmon, roasted vegetables, lemon butter. Nothing fancy, but it tasted like a reset button, a clean slate. Work filled the empty spaces after that. Shifts at the firehouse, training the rookies, helping with department fundraising events. Losing myself in the physicality of it helped. Firefighting burns out grief and leaves resolve behind. 6 months post-divorce, my captain called me into his office. "You've stepped up," he said simply. "No drama, no personal mess bleeding into shifts. You lead well. You've earned this." He slid a paper across the desk. "Lead position, Engine 7. Better pay, more responsibility, a chance to mentor the younger firefighters, keep them alive, keep them sharp." I took the promotion immediately. I started running in the mornings, joined a martial arts gym on the recommendation of a friend, cut back on the junk I'd eaten during Ethan's bakery meltdown years. I lost weight, gained muscle, slept through the night, and, for the first time in a long time, felt like my life couldn't be cracked open by someone else's chaos. 8 months after the divorce, I volunteered at a charity event our department co-hosted with the hospital. That's where I met Liam, an ER nurse with calm eyes, sharp humor, and a presence that felt like structure instead of smoke. We were assigned to the same table, folding donation forms and sorting gift bags. "You're Avery, right?" he asked. "Engine 7? "Yeah," I said. "ER? "Yep, the place that smells like fear and hand sanitizer." I snorted. "Accurate." We ended up talking the whole event. He didn't ask invasive questions, didn't talk over me, didn't try to impress me. He just listened, shared stories, made me laugh. And then, at the end of the night, he said, "If you ever want to grab coffee, or something stronger, that'd be nice." I said yes. We started slow, coffee after shifts, walks on days off, late night calls that didn't feel heavy or draining. No drama, no chaos, no games, just someone who showed up when he said he would. Someone who didn't make me feel like I had to tiptoe around his ego or his ambitions or his need for attention. 4 months later, we were officially together. I didn't announce it, didn't post anything online, didn't owe anyone an explanation or a performance. But word gets around, and unfortunately, word got to Ethan. Meanwhile, Ethan's life was cracking apart in slow, predictable layers. His commercial kitchen lease came due. He couldn't pay it. Without my income, and with 20% of his own salary garnished for restitution, he didn't have the money to keep the bakery afloat. Customers had already started to vanish. His reviews were still brutal. People complained about dry cakes, late orders, and unprofessional communication. One reviewer wrote, "If I wanted to taste disappointment, I'd call my ex." The internet has range and cruelty. Ethan tried finding investors, Julia's connections, but no one wanted to sink money into a bakery with failing product, a disgraced owner, and a criminal record. Banks told him no. His father, who'd bailed him out during the early bakery days, told him he was on his own now and hung up. So Ethan sold everything he could: industrial mixes, cupcake displays, decor, catering supplies, all for fractions of what they'd cost. Fire sale posts littered Facebook Marketplace. Someone messaged me about it. I didn't respond. 6 months after the divorce, he shut the bakery down. He posted a polished Instagram story with the caption, "After careful consideration, I have decided to close Ethan's Artisan Bakery to pursue new opportunities." Translation: I ran out of money, burned every bridge, and can't keep pretending this is working. The comments were vicious. "Where's my refund from last year? You owe me a cake and an apology. Maybe try not stealing from wives next time. Did Julia pay your rent too, or just your ego?" He deleted the post within hours, but screenshots last forever. Julia's downfall was bigger, messier, and far more dramatic. Turns out being a psychiatrist doesn't make you immune to terrible decisions. A friend of mine whose spouse worked in healthcare texted me one night, "Hey, small town gossip. Is Ethan's ex named Julia S? If so, she's in trouble." My stomach dropped. Trouble, as it turned out, meant multiple patient complaints, inappropriate relationships, boundary violations, prescribing controlled substances without proper evaluation, confidentiality breaches. The medical board opened an investigation. Some of the complaints were older, years before Ethan re-entered her life. But after she started reconnecting with him, they escalated. Then, in a twist so ironic it almost felt scripted, Ethan made it worse for her. Or rather, Julia made it worse for herself because of Ethan. She'd confided in him, texted him inappropriate things about patients, spoken loosely about cases while trying to impress him, left documents lying around. And when she pawned my mother's ring and Ethan confronted her, she panicked. She lashed out. And, because she was vindictive, she anonymously tipped the medical board about misconduct she'd witnessed from her ex-patients. But she wasn't careful. She revealed enough that the board connected the dots back to her. Within 8 months, Julia's license was suspended pending investigation. Her practice closed. Her patients reassigned. Her reputation tanked. She'd gambled her career on charm and shortcuts. And she lost. As for Ethan, he and Julia tried living together after the bakery closure. But without her income and his bakery gone, they slipped into a smaller apartment in a worse neighborhood. His Mercedes was repossessed. Last I heard, he was driving a beat-up sedan with mismatched doors. A mutual acquaintance sent me a photo once. Ethan at the grocery store, pushing a cart with frozen meals and off-brand cereal. He looked older, tired, deflated. Not because I wanted to laugh, but because it hit me, suddenly and deeply. This man had every chance to show up, every chance to grow, every chance to be better, and he threw all of it away. Not because of one moment, not because of one funeral, but because of who he chose to be, consistently, when no one was watching. Consequences weren't cruel. They were inevitable. And somehow that realization made me feel lighter than anything else ever had. A week later, Ethan escalated. It was 7:10 p.m., dinner shift again. The station smelled like garlic, chicken, and whatever questionable seasoning mix the rookies had overused. Then the bay door alarm chimed. the buzzer that signaled someone had come in through the front. "Someone's here," the rookie said, peeking toward the hallway. "Probably a vendor," the captain muttered. Except the footsteps that followed weren't the brisk, purposeful stride of a delivery driver. They were slow, hesitant, like the person wasn't sure they should be there. And then Ethan stepped into the dining hall. He looked better than he had in the grocery store photo, but not by much. Clean shirt, fresh haircut, but something tight and desperate clung to him, like his skin didn't quite fit. My fork froze midair. The room went silent. "Avery," he said, voice wavering. "We need to talk." "No," I said immediately, standing. "We don't." "Just 5 minutes, please." "You're not allowed to be here," I said. "This is a workplace. You need to leave." His eyes flicked around the room, at my captain, at my crew, like he was begging for an ally. No one gave him one. "Avery, I'm trying," he insisted, stepping closer. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, but we were good together. We can be good again." "No, Ethan," I said. "You were good at pretending. There's a difference." His face crumpled. "Why are you being so cold?" "You missed my mother's funeral," I said, dead flat. "You stole from me. You vandalized my property. You stayed at your ex-girlfriend's house while I grieved alone. And now you think you get to stroll into my station and ask for another chance?" "Avery, please." "No." He flinched at the firmness. Then panic took over. I was confused," he stammered. "Julia manipulated me. She promised things. She said she could fix the bakery. She used me. You made every decision that brought you to this moment," I cut in. "Julia didn't make you miss the funeral. She didn't make you steal from me. She didn't make you slash my tires. That was all you." His eyes began to shine with tears. "Please," he whispered. "Please just talk to me. Everything is falling apart. My job sucks. My dad won't help me. Julia's license is suspended. I'm drowning in debt. I need someone." "I'm not your life raft," I said. And that's when he broke. Completely. Ethan dropped to his knees in the middle of the fire station. Literally. On his knees. My entire crew gasped. Someone choked on air. My captain muttered, "Oh, hell no," under his breath. Ethan's palms pressed together like he was praying. "Please," he begged. "Avery, please. I have nothing left. Julia won't marry me. My father won't help me. I can't afford my place. I'm working retail and still paying you every month. I need you. Please." I stared at him. This man who once claimed he'd take care of me, now kneeling on greasy tile, begging the woman he betrayed to save him. I felt nothing. Not pity. Not satisfaction. Just emptiness. A void where guilt used to live. "Get up," I said. "Not until you agree to talk." "Get up," I repeated, "or I'm calling the cops." He shook his head violently. "No, just listen. Just hear me." I pulled out my phone and started dialing. That did it. He scrambled to his feet, stumbling backward. "You're cruel," he spat. "You're actually cruel." "No," I said calmly. "I'm healthy. There's a difference." He wiped his face, tried to collect himself, failed. He tried gathering whatever pride he had left. "You'll regret this," he said shakily. "One day you'll realize what you gave up." "I didn't give up anything," I replied. "You threw away everything." He stormed toward the exit. At the hallway, he turned back. "I wrote you a letter," he said, pulling an envelope from his jacket. "Everything I should have said. Everything we could fix. Please just read it." "No." He dropped it onto the floor like a dramatic mic drop and fled the building. One of the rookies whispered, "Holy hell." Another muttered, "That's not how reconciliation works." My captain put a hand on my shoulder. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said. "We're good." After everyone went back to eating, I picked up the envelope, walked it to the trash can, and dropped it in without opening it. My life wasn't going backward. And Ethan wasn't part of my story anymore, or so I thought. Because 6 months later, he came back one more time. And this time, he crossed a line he couldn't uncross. 6 months passed. 6 months of peace. No surprise packages, no dramatic voicemails, no late-night pacing caught on the cameras, just quiet. I had moved into a new house with Liam, something small, bright, and safe. A place with sunlight instead of shadows, with a kitchen where someone actually cooked, with a life that felt rooted. We had routines: Sunday morning pancakes, evening walks, shared grocery lists, arguments that stayed reasonable, conversations that didn't end with one of us apologizing for existing. It felt like healing. It felt like I'd finally stepped out of the burning building and into clean air. Then, one Sunday morning, as I was flipping blueberry pancakes and Liam was slicing strawberries beside me, the doorbell rang. "Expecting anyone?" he asked. "No," I said. He went to answer it. I heard the door open, then silence. A stretched, heavy silence. "Avery, Liam called. His voice was controlled, but firm. "You need to come here." I set the spatula down and walked to the entryway. Ethan stood on my doorstep. I hadn't seen him in months, but the emotional whiplash was instant. The shock of seeing a ghost with skin on. His shirt was wrinkled. His eyes were bloodshot. His jaw was covered in uneven stubble. He looked both older and smaller, like a balloon that had finally deflated. "Avery," he breathed, relief flooding his face when he saw me. "As soon as I heard you moved, I had to come." "You had to leave," I corrected, "immediately." He ignored that. "I've been working on myself," he said quickly. "I paid off almost a third of the restitution. I'm going to anger management. I'm sticking to probation. I'm doing everything the court asked." "Because they forced you to," I said, arms crossed. "That's still progress," he protested. "I'm trying. I'm taking responsibility." "No," I said, "you're complying. There's a difference." He blinked at that, like the distinction had never occurred to him. Liam stepped slightly closer, a quiet signal of support and protection. "You heard her. She's asked you to leave." Ethan's face twisted with frustration and hurt. He looked between us, me steady, Liam calm, and something ugly flashed in his eyes. "Oh," he said, voice dipping low, "so this is him, the replacement." "This is Liam," I said, "my partner." Ethan scoffed. "Partner? Really? You think he knows you better than I do? You think he understands you?" Liam didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't get defensive. He simply answered, "I understand that she deserved better." Ethan snapped his head toward him. "You don't know anything about us." "I know enough," Liam said, tone steady as bedrock. "You missed her mother's funeral to party with your ex. You stole from her. You destroyed her property. You put her through hell. She told me the truth. That's all I need." Ethan went rigid. His face reddened. He turned to me, desperate again. "That's not the full story. I wasn't thinking straight. Julia pressured me. She's the one who pawned the ring. She used me, Avery. She lied. You keep trying to rewrite the story so you're not the villain," I said quietly. "But you made every choice that hurt me. Every one." "I loved you," he shouted. "No," I said. "You wanted me to love you enough for both of us." He flinched as if slapped. Then he switched tactics, classic Ethan, his expression softening, his voice trembling. "Avery, I'm homeless next month. I'm working retail. I'm drowning in garnishments. Julia's gone. My dad won't take my calls. I have nothing. I need help." My jaw tightened. I felt something inside me stiffen, like armor sliding into place. "Ethan," I said, "you need to leave." He shook his head, frantic. "Just 5 minutes. Please, let me inside. Let me talk to you alone." "No," I said. "You don't get to be alone with me ever again." His breathing quickened, panic crawling up his throat. "You can't do this," he whispered. "You can't just erase me." "I already did," I said gently. "I just stopped giving you the rope to pull yourself back in." His eyes glossed over. He opened his mouth to argue. So I pulled out my phone. "Ethan," I said, calm as a medic on scene, "leave now, or I'm calling the police." His face went pale. He stepped back onto the porch, shaking his head in disbelief. "You're choosing him over me?" "I'm choosing myself," I said. "Something I should have done years ago." His breath hitched. He backed away another step, another. Then he pointed a trembling finger at me and said, "You'll regret this. When you're alone one day, when he leaves you, when everything falls apart, you'll regret letting me go." I looked at him, really looked at him. The boyish charm was gone. The swagger was gone. The arrogance was gone. In their place stood a man hollowed out by his own decisions. "I regret nothing," I said. He stared at me, shaking, then turned and stormed down the driveway. Liam closed the door the moment he hit the sidewalk. I locked the deadbolt and dialed the non-emergency police line. "Hi," I said. "I need to file a harassment and trespassing report." The officer arrived 20 minutes later, took down the details, filed the report, and warned that if Ethan returned uninvited, he'd be arrested. I thanked him. When the door shut again, Liam turned to me. "You okay?" he asked gently. I took a breath, a long, slow, cleansing breath. "Yeah," I said, "I'm finally okay." He wrapped his arms around me, grounding me, steadying me. Outside, the world went quiet again. Inside, the kitchen smelled like pancakes and strawberries. A life, my life, warm and ungelled by chaos. Ethan didn't come back after that. Not to the house, not to the station, not to my workplace, not to anywhere that mattered. He faded, and I rose. Some people burn everything they touch. Some people survive the fire, and some people learn how to walk out of the flames and never look back. I learned. I walked away, and I never looked back.